This is Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
I want to shift the discussion now to communications and telecoms, because data from the National Telecommunications and Information Administration shows that roughly 1 in 5 U.S. households are not online, and that's especially in suburban and rural areas. So, of course, this is an important priority for the Biden administration, which has earmarked $42 billion in grants to help kind of bridge this digital divide, but it's also a major issue outside the United States. So enter this space Tarana Wireless, which has spent over a decade developing a network to rival fiber with less physical infrastructure, working on a novel way to direct wireless signals around obstacles. The company announcing today that it raised $50 million from Digital Alpha Advisors, a VC that focuses on digital infrastructure. And mind you, it was already valued last year at over $1 billion. So here we have with us in the Interactive Broker studio is Basil Alwan. He is the CEO of Tarana Wireless. Basil, thank you so much for joining us in studio as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Explain to us first why Tarana's technology is different.
Yeah, it's an important question because people ask, there's a lot of wireless technology around. There's satellite, there's of course wireless, there's 5G, there's Wi-Fi. And Tarana actually started more than a decade ago, as you noted. It's a very deep tech company with the idea that home broadband, it's incredibly voracious. It takes about 30 to 50 times more bandwidth to serve a home than to serve a mobile. So there had not been yet built a wireless technology for home broadband. And then instead, there were other technology being used that can kind of do the job. But what people really want, especially now, is they want a high-speed connection, low latency, and they want it to rival fiber in terms of its performance, but they'd like to deliver it from a wireless point of view. So this is a really deep dive rebuild of wireless technology with some really advanced tricks to get better performance, non-line of sight, in both licensed and unlicensed spectrum. And if you're familiar with that, that's a pretty interesting trick.
Heavy regulated. I'll turn the microphone on and join the conversation. A heavily regulated industry when it comes to that spectrum.
Right.
But explain the tech here, because the road to providing, wireless internet to homes is paved with the carcasses of many a company. I was there when Starry launched its service.
Right.
That was one that was promising.
Yes.
In cities.
Yes.
That, I believe, was line of sight, though.
Yes.
So
that's right.
How do you do this in a way that does it cheaper than the wireless companies like T-Mobile, AT&T,
right,
and Verizon,
yes,
but also does it without the infrastructure of the large telecom carriers?
Yeah, of course it's a bit complicated, but it's really fundamentally important right now because digital divide is so critical at the moment. So you have to look at it this way: in the world of spectrum, you have a really high frequency spectrum, which is really good at high speeds because it's high frequency, but it's line of sight, and it's also impacted by weather at very high frequencies. So that technology is really good for speed, but it's not so good because if you have to have a tower within line of sight to every home you're trying to serve, it's incredibly expensive because you have to have thousands and thousands of towers in every city. On the other hand, you have low frequency spectrum, 600, 800 megahertz, like the spectrum just sold between T-Mobile and Comcast today was announced. That spectrum is incredibly good at distance, but it's not quite as good at really high speeds. You have to use a lot more spectrum. Mid-band, right between 2 and 7 gigahertz where we operate, is kind of that sweet spot. You get non-line of sight, like low frequency signals, travels nice around corners, but you also get very, very good speeds. The challenge with mid-band is it's all used for the mobile network. And if you think about the economics of delivering bits to customers, the mobile ARPU, or revenue per user, is about the same as you get for a home. Yet, to support a home, you have to deliver 30 to 50 times more bits in a given period of time.
Yeah, we stream a lot of Netflix.
Yeah, right. And on big screens, which really makes a difference. And now on demand, which makes it even more difficult. So the challenge has been, how do you solve that problem? How do you get better spectral efficiency specifically? But also, can you use both licensed and unlicensed and still deliver a reliable service? And that's basically the technology Tarana has perfected over 10 years.
I'm a novice at this. Talk to me. Why use unlicensed spectrum?
Right. It's a really important question. The reason is that the licensed spectrum is pretty quickly consumed by the mobile network. in that sweet spot of spectrum where you want to operate. And so you have to decide how you're going to handle that. Either you allocate more to fixed, but you're not going to get as much money for that, or you can avail yourself of unlicensed. The problem with unlicensed is that at any moment in time, somebody else can start using it as well. And then what happens to your signal if somebody nearby starts transmitting in the same spectrum? And the technology that Tarana really innovated here is the ability to cancel that interference, basically not listen. It's a way to think of it. This is a really good analogy. You're sitting in an auditorium or in a room full of people, and there's someone 20 people away that you want to listen to, and people are talking pretty loud right next to you. We have the ability in real time to silence, not jam, but just not listen to, mute from our point of view, all those signals that are really close, and listen to that distant signal. And we actually pick that signal up. That is a very unique technology. It requires chips, digital signal processing. It's a pretty interesting trick.
So who are your customers and your potential customers? If we think about rural areas, increasingly they're being served by companies like Starlink. That's satellite broadband.
Right.
Densely packed areas, especially in the United States, can be served by wireline operators who already have laid the cable and done the groundwork.
Exactly.
Who are your customers?
Yeah, so another really good question, because what you learn if you're in this business of delivering broadband is that you need a toolkit. You don't need just a tool. It's like telling someone to build a house with a hammer. You're saying, no, I'm going to use the right tool for the job. In the dense areas, as you know, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes fiber is the right answer. It's expensive to do, but you have enough density to justify economically it makes sense. In the ultra remote where there's no infrastructure, satellite is really the only choice, honestly, because house and LEO satellites are quite good for that. There's no way to solve this problem, and it is a real challenge for the country, our country, but countries around the world, without solving it with multiple tools. And where we come in is actually in between. So let's say sparse urban, dense rural. It's very hard from a capacity point of view for the satellites to really support that in mass. It's very hard to get the economics out of fiber. So we come in and help right there. And that's where and that's, by the way, if you look at it, it's a big part of the problem. One more comment on that. There's a lot of focus right now on the Infrastructure and Jobs Act and the $42.5 billion you mentioned. But what's not as reported is that in the U.S., which is kind of interesting, we have about 135 million households. There's about 50 million households that have exactly one choice, that are not one choice for internet service providers, that are not considered unserved or underserved. Wow. So there's a big opportunity to help there as well.
So what is the equipment that you need? When I got Fios, the guy just came and ran a fiber optic line from the basement up to my building, and we have the Verizon modem. What's the equipment that you need?
Yeah, it's almost the same. You have a little device, although in our case you have a small antenna about the size of a small notebook computer. It's flat. So it's not like the size of a big satellite dish. It's pretty small, and that's on the outside of your house, pointing in the general direction of a tower or a building where our receiver is. You run a Ethernet cable into your house, and you're done. And that's it. And then on the other side, we of course grab all those signals and connect them to the internet.
I believe you talked last year, maybe last March, about the potential to maybe go public in 2023.
Yeah.
Is that something that's still on the table to help you grow?
I think 2023 certainly not, but I will say this company is interesting, and one of the reasons I'm enthused about it is that it's the intersection of a quite large market globally and very, very deep technology, difficult to reproduce. A lot of sweat equity has gone into this company, so I think it does warrant potential for a public offering, and we're still, building the company.
Next year.
And let's see. It's going to depend on the market, but it's also going to depend on our progress. But right now, it's looking quite good.
How much is the service per household, and does it depend on how much usage you have?
Yeah, so it varies. It's not usage based generally. Our customers, one of our customers just launched a service on our equipment that's offering 200 down, 50 up for $50. Other people are offering 400 meg services, and now we're launching a gigabit platform, and that's going to launch in Q4, so you can do gigabit down. And in fact, we just shipped our first units of that this week, and as much as 500 megabits up. So it's a really strong service. So you can get tiered services like you have on others, where you have kind of a starter package. Right. You can get a little bit more, pay a little bit more, that kind of thing.
So interesting. Thank you. Basil Alwan, he's the CEO of Tarana Wireless. He joined us in the studio to talk about interesting wireless technology.